My wife said I wasn't a real man because I cleaned, so I cleaned the house one last time and left without saying goodbye. I'm a 32-year-old guy, and I've always been the kind of person who takes pride in my home. I like things clean, organized, and functional. Not because I'm obsessed, but because it gives me some sense of control in a life that often feels chaotic. My wife, though, she's never understood that. From the very beginning, she rolled her eyes at my routines, making jokes about how I babied the house or implying that real men don't scrub sinks. I tried to laugh it off at first, hoping it was just teasing, but the comments kept coming, subtle but cutting. Every morning, I wake up, make breakfast, wash the dishes, and tidy up before work. She rolls out of bed, drinks her coffee, and within minutes, she's pointing out something I missed or criticizing the way I folded a towel. "You call this clean?" she'd say, smirking. Or worse, she'd say nothing at all and just sigh, like I was a child failing a test I didn't know I was taking. It's exhausting, like every effort I make is invisible, except when it's not, and then I'm mocked. I started questioning myself, wondering if I was the problem, if I was overreacting, if maybe she was right, that a man shouldn't care about these things. But there's also a quiet pride that refuses to let me feel small. I love taking care of my home because it's my sanctuary, even if she doesn't see it that way. Yet lately, that pride has started to feel heavier, like a weight I can't shrug off. Something's been brewing between us, and I can feel it tightening every time she makes another jab. Every time she questions my masculinity over something as simple as cleaning a countertop. I remember one morning specifically, just last week when she said it out loud, "You're not a real man because you clean." My hands froze mid-wipe, and the soap suds felt heavier than ever. I forced a laugh, but inside, something shifted. That moment, I knew nothing would ever be the same after this. It started as a casual comment, or at least, that's what she made it sound like. I was in the kitchen, scrubbing the stove, trying to get that stubborn grease off, when she leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, smirking. "You know," she said slowly, "a real man wouldn't be wasting his time cleaning. That's women's work." My chest tightened and I froze mid-swipe. I wanted to reply, to argue, but the words caught in my throat. I just nodded and smiled, trying to act like it didn't sting, but it did. Deep down, it cut sharper than any argument we'd ever had. I spent the rest of the day replaying her words in my head. Every dish I washed, every towel I folded felt meaningless. I caught myself wondering if maybe she was right, if caring about the house made me weak, less of a man. I hate that I let her get under my skin like that, but her words hit a nerve I didn't even realize was there. She wasn't just teasing. She was making me doubt myself, making me feel small in a home I worked so hard to maintain. Later that evening, I tried to talk to her. "Why do you always make me feel like I'm not enough?" I asked quietly. She laughed, a sharp, dismissive sound. "Not enough? You clean the house, you cook. That's not manly." The laugh, the words, they felt like a punch to the gut. I said nothing after that. Just went to the bedroom, staring at the ceiling, imagining a life where I was respected for the effort I put in, not ridiculed. The house felt heavier that night, quieter, but in a suffocating way. Even the familiar hum of the fridge sounded critical. I realized then that this wasn't just one remark. It was a pattern that was slowly wearing me down, day by day, word by word, until I wasn't sure what I deserved, or even who I was anymore. And in that silence, I felt the first flicker of something dangerous. A quiet, simmering determination to change this story. The next few weeks were a blur of small humiliations that added up until they felt like a tidal wave. Every time I cooked, she'd comment on my chopping skills or the way I arranged the plates. Every time I vacuumed, she'd sigh, muttering, "You're really obsessed with this, huh?" I started noticing the pattern. Her criticism was never about the work itself. It was about me, about making me feel inadequate. Even when I tried to joke it off, her smirk or sharp laugh made it clear she didn't care if it hurt. I remember one evening, standing in the living room, dusting the shelves, when she walked past and said, "You really shouldn't waste your time on this stuff. That's not what men do." My hands froze mid-dust and I felt a surge of anger I couldn't shake. I wanted to snap at her, to yell, to make her understand how much effort I put into keeping this house together. But I didn't. Instead, I felt my own shame creeping in, like I had failed somehow. It's hard to explain, but the house started to feel like a trap, a gilded cage where every move I made was judged, criticized, or dismissed. By this point, I realized I was walking on eggshells all the time. Even when she wasn't actively mocking me, the tension was there, lurking in every corner. I'd catch her staring at me sometimes, a calculating look in her eyes, and I'd feel like I was under a microscope I could never escape. Nights were the worst. I'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything I'd done that day, wondering which small act would earn me another dig tomorrow. And that's when the resentment started to build. Not the kind that explodes immediately, but the quiet, simmering kind that settles in your chest and weighs you down with every breath. I knew something had to give soon, but I didn't yet know what. I thought I'd had enough. One evening, I decided to confront her, not angrily, but honestly. I stood in the kitchen, arms crossed, and said, "Why do you keep making me feel like I'm not a man because I clean? I work, I cook, I take care of this home. Doesn't that count for anything?" I expected a little acknowledgement, maybe an apology, or at least a conversation. Instead, she laughed. That sharp, cold laugh that made my chest ache. "Count for anything?" she said, voice dripping with sarcasm. "You cleaning the house doesn't make you a man. It makes you pathetic. Stop trying so hard to be something you're not." My stomach dropped. I felt the heat of humiliation rise in my face. I wanted to defend myself, but every word I tried to speak felt useless against her contempt. She had turned my attempt at honesty into another weapon, and suddenly the entire room felt like a battlefield I wasn't prepared for. That night, I sat alone in the living room, the lights dim, the hum of the refrigerator louder than usual. I stared at my hands, trembling slightly, wondering how someone could belittle me so completely in my own home. It wasn't just about cleaning anymore. It was about respect, dignity, and identity. I realized I had been underestimating the depth of her disregard for me, and it shook me more than I wanted to admit. But beneath the shame and hurt, a spark ignited. If she wanted to see me as pathetic, fine. But I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let her control how I valued myself. That thought felt dangerous, intoxicating, and liberating. And in that dark, quiet living room, I started to form a plan. One that she would never see coming. Something had shifted. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was awake, and I could feel the tension in the air like the calm before a storm. The next few days were unbearable. Every glance she threw, every comment she made, even casual small talk, felt like another nail in my self-worth. I tried to go about my normal routine, cleaning, cooking, working. But the joy I once took in these things was gone. Even the smell of the soap and polish that usually comforted me now felt bitter. I realized that no matter what I did, nothing would ever be enough. One night, I sat on the edge of the bed, head in my hands, heart pounding. I thought about all the mornings I woke early, the meals I prepared, the floors I scrubbed, the endless hours of trying to keep this home together. And yet here I was, dismissed, belittled, and humiliated over something I thought was my contribution, my pride. My chest felt tight, my eyes blurred with tears I couldn't stop. For the first time, I admitted to myself that I had reached my breaking point. I wasn't just frustrated anymore. I felt trapped. The house, once my sanctuary, now felt like a prison where every move I made was a test I couldn't pass. I imagined leaving, walking out the door with nothing but my dignity, but fear gnawed at me. Where would I go? Could I survive? Would I ever feel whole again? And yet, amidst the despair, a quiet determination began to rise. I realized that staying meant continued humiliation and emotional erosion. I had reached rock bottom, yes, but from this depth, I also saw a path forward. A path that required action, that required reclaiming control, that required a final statement she wouldn't forget. I didn't know exactly how, but I knew what had to happen. And the thought of it, terrifying and liberating all at once, made my hands tremble as I stared at the dark ceiling above me, wondering if she would ever see me coming. That night, lying in the dark, I made my decision. I wasn't going to fight with her anymore. I wasn't going to beg for respect she clearly didn't have to give. Instead, I was going to leave, not in a storm of shouting or slammed doors, but quietly, methodically, on my own terms. And before I walked out of that house for the last time, I would do the one thing she always mocked me for. I would clean it, every inch, better than ever. My way, my dignity, my closure. I started planning in my head. What to take, what to leave, how to make sure she'd understand, without me ever having to say a word. It was strange. For the first time in months, my mind felt clear. I could see every detail. The spotless counters, the neatly folded towels, the faint smell of lemon cleaner drifting through empty rooms. It wouldn't just be a house. It would be a message. During the days that followed, I went about my routine as usual, but inside I was different. When she muttered another jab at me, I didn't flinch. When she rolled her eyes, I didn't bite back. It wasn't resignation. It was preparation. She thought she had broken me, but she had no idea I was already gone in my heart. I pictured her walking into that immaculate house, seeing my note, realizing for the first time that she had pushed me past the point of no return. That vision kept me steady. I was no longer asking myself if I deserved better. I knew I did. And soon, she would know it too, even if my absence was the only thing left for her to see. The night before I left, I stood in the doorway of our living room and took a deep breath. The house was dark, except for the soft glow of a single lamp. Everything looked exactly the same, but inside me, everything had changed. This wasn't my prison anymore. This was my stage for one last act. I started with the kitchen, my hands moving. Automatically, scrubbing the stove until the metal shone like silver, wiping the counters until they felt slick under my fingertips. The lemon-scented cleaner filled the air, sharp and bright, cutting through the heaviness that had settled over me for months. The rhythmic sound of the sponge against the tile was like a heartbeat, steady and sure. I worked in silence, feeling every motion as a goodbye. Then the living room, dusting every shelf, lining up the books she never read, vacuuming until the carpet looked untouched. Each task was deliberate, almost ceremonial. I didn't rush. I wanted every corner, every surface, to say what I couldn't. I cared. I gave my best. You'll never see it again. By the time I reached the bedroom, my arms ached, and my knees were sore from kneeling. But the pain felt clean, too, like I was burning off months of humiliation with every stroke of the cloth. The scent of detergent clung to my skin, a quiet badge of my dignity. When I finally stood back and looked at the house, it sparkled in a way it hadn't in years. It was beautiful, almost unrecognizable. And I realized, this wasn't just a clean house. It was my message, my closure, my proof. This was me leaving on my own terms. In the silence of that immaculate room, I felt the weight of everything I'd endured, but also a strange lightness. Tomorrow, she'd wake up to perfection and absence. I imagined her face, and for the first time in months, I almost smiled. After the house was spotless, I went to the bedroom and sat at the desk. I pulled out a piece of paper and a pen, not knowing exactly what I would write, but knowing it had to be honest. The note wasn't long. It didn't accuse or beg. It simply said what had been left unsaid for months, that I was done. That her words, her ridicule, had pushed me to the edge. That I deserved respect, dignity, and peace. And that I wasn't going to wait for her to give it. I left hints in the room. A small stack of her untouched mail neatly organized. The closet folded perfectly. The kitchen counters gleaming. Every corner whispered the effort I had given, the care I had poured into the life we shared. It was a quiet, unspoken message. I cared, I tried, and now I am gone. I imagined her finding it in the morning, the Kai, shock of seeing the house so perfect, so meticulously arranged, while I was nowhere to be found. I imagined her panic, the sudden awareness that she had taken me for granted. The thought sent a shiver down my spine, a mix of fear and satisfaction. By the time I slipped the note under her pillow, my heart was racing. I felt like a phantom, leaving behind only evidence of my presence, proof of my care, and the undeniable fact that I was leaving forever. I didn't want confrontation. I didn't want tears or anger. I just wanted to reclaim my life on my own terms. I took one last look around the house, breathing in the faint scent of cleaner and polished wood. The silence felt sacred, almost reverent. Tomorrow, it would speak louder than I ever could. The morning air was cold and sharp as I stepped outside, carrying only a small bag with essentials. The streets were quiet, almost empty, and the world felt different somehow, as if it had been waiting for me to make this move all along. I paused for a moment on the doorstep, looking back at the house one last time. It gleamed in the early light, spotless, silent, and untouched. A strange mix of sorrow and liberation tightened in my chest. I walked steadily, each step echoing, in the empty street, aware that with every movement, I was leaving not just the house, but months of humiliation, doubt, and heartbreak behind me. The bag was light, but the weight lifted from my chest was heavier than anything I had carried before. I didn't know exactly where I was going, and that uncertainty should have terrified me, but it didn't. There was freedom in it. As I passed the corner store, I imagined her waking up, seeing the note, noticing the clean house, and realizing I was gone. Would she panic? Would she feel regret? I didn't want to find out yet. I didn't want confrontation. I only wanted to feel the quiet victory of leaving on my own terms. The city woke slowly around me. Cars, distant voices, the smell of coffee. From a nearby cafe, but I felt removed from it all, suspended in this private moment of triumph. The streets were mine, the morning mine, the choice finally mine. And somewhere in the back of my mind, I knew she would never see this coming. I walked farther, leaving the house behind, every step heavier with meaning, lighter with relief. The sun rose over the horizon, painting everything gold. And I realized I wasn't just leaving a house. I was leaving a version of myself she never respected, and I was reclaiming the real me. Later that morning, I imagined her waking up and noticing the silence. No footsteps in the kitchen, no clatter of coffee cups, no sighs or muttered complaints. She would step into the living room, and that's when she'd see it. The house, spotless, everything in perfect order. The kind of clean that makes you pause and think, who did this? And then finally the realization would hit. I was gone. I pictured her eyes widening, confusion flooding her face. The note under the pillow would catch her attention, and she'd read my words slowly, disbelief turning to anger, frustration, maybe even regret. She had assumed I'd argue, yell, plead. She had assumed I'd be defeated, broken, still trying to prove myself to her. But the truth was far more unsettling. I had left without drama, without confrontation, leaving only the evidence of my care and the undeniable fact that I was done. The shock twist hit her where she didn't expect it. My absence. My quiet, deliberate, unannounced departure would speak louder than any argument, any tears, any explanation. I imagined her pacing, flipping through the house, opening drawers and closets, noticing every detail I had left perfectly in place. For once, she would see the effort, the love, the pride I had poured into this home, and she would see that it no longer belonged to her. And in that moment, I felt an odd mix of vindication and relief. I hadn't shouted. I hadn't lashed out. I hadn't given her the satisfaction of a fight. I had taken control, reclaimed my dignity, and left her to grapple with the consequences of her own dismissiveness. The house, silent and gleaming, was my final statement, my power move, my quiet revenge. Somewhere deep down, I knew this shock would linger with her. She would never see a morning like that again, one where I was both present in my work and absent in my being. And for the first time in a long time, I smiled, knowing I had finally won in my own way. A few days later, I found myself in a small apartment I had rented quietly, a space all my own. The walls were bare, the air smelled faintly of fresh paint and promise, and for the first time in months, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. I reflected on everything, the jabs, the humiliation, the endless critiques that chipped away at my confidence. And I realized I had survived it all. More than survived, actually. I had taken control when I could have crumbled. I started small, making coffee in a kitchen that was truly mine, folding laundry without being watched or judged, even just sitting on the couch and reading without interruption. Each ordinary act felt like reclaiming pieces of myself I had lost, and every night I went to bed lighter than I had in years, unburdened by ridicule or expectation. It was quiet, it was simple, and it was profoundly empowering. I thought about her sometimes, how she might still be staring at the spotless house, realizing the depth of what she had pushed away. I didn't feel anger anymore. Not really. What remained was clarity. I knew my worth, my dignity, my right to peace. I had given my best, and when it wasn't enough, I chose myself. That choice, finally, fully, without compromise, was my ultimate victory. And as I looked out the window at the city waking up, the sunlight reflecting off the buildings, I smiled. The world felt wider, quieter, freer. I had lost the life I thought I wanted, but in gaining myself I realized I had won something far greater. The journey had been painful, humiliating, and raw, but it had led me here, empowered, whole and finally free. Weeks later, I stood on the balcony of my new apartment, coffee in hand, watching the city hum below me. The air was crisp, the streets alive, and for the first time in years I felt untethered, not burdened by someone else's expectations, not defined by ridicule or judgment. I thought about the house I had left behind, spotless and silent, a testament to the life I had poured into it. I hadn't needed confrontation. I hadn't needed tears or apologies. My departure had been the message. Sometimes I imagined her finally realizing what she had lost. Perhaps she walked into that perfect home, saw the note, and understood too late that I had given everything and received nothing but contempt. That thought brought a quiet satisfaction, not revenge in the cruel sense, but justice in the simplest, most profound way. I had chosen myself, my dignity, my self-respect, my life. Now my mornings are my own. I wake up, make coffee, play music loud, cook, clean, live. But for me, not for validation. Every action reminds me that I am capable, strong, and worthy. I don't need approval to feel like a man, a partner, or a human being with dignity. The house behind me is gone, but the lessons, the empowerment, and the quiet victory stay with me. And sometimes, in the stillness of the night, I smile at the irony. The act she mocked most. My care for the home became the final proof of my strength. I didn't shout, I didn't fight, I didn't beg. I left, cleaned, and walked away. On my terms, free.